Good morning, America. Breaking news overnight. U.S. attack on Venezuela. Explosions rock the capital of Caracas. Smoke seen rising from the blast. President Trump confirming the U.S. has successfully carried out a large-scale strike. President Maduro and his wife have been captured and flown out of the country. Now, how they tracked him down, the elite American Special Operations Forces on the ground.
The U.S. Embassy warning U.S. citizens to shelter in place. Parts of the city reported to be without power after the extraordinary nighttime operation. The FAA banning U.S. commercial flights in the airspace nearby. Venezuela calling it, quote, an imperialist attack and urging citizens to take to the streets.
The strikes following months of military buildup in the region. The USS Gerald Ford aircraft carrier and other warships there. And the U.S. launching dozens of deadly strikes on alleged drug boats, killing more than 110 people. Now the big questions amid this major escalation. How was the operation carried out? Where are President Maduro and his wife now? Who's in control of Venezuela? And what happens next? We have team coverage this morning.
Live from ABC News headquarters in New York City, this is Good Morning America.
Good morning, America. Thank you for joining us on this Saturday. We have so much to get to on our breaking news story. The U.S. carrying out what it calls a large-scale strike on Venezuela. Explosions ringing out in the capital of Caracas.
And President Trump's stunning report that President Nicolas Maduro and his wife were captured and flown out of the country.
And this all follows months of the Trump administration's escalating military actions, including attacking suspected drug boats you see there. We have team coverage looking at all the angles, including what we're learning about how the operation was carried out. The U.S. Elite Special Forces on the ground. Martha Raddatz is standing by with a look at that. And the president is set to address the nation later this morning. But we're going to start here with ABC's Matt Rivers. Matt, good morning. You were actually off the coast of Venezuela just weeks ago.
Yeah, and we saw that the United States was building toward that military capacity to carry out some kind of strike like this. But this stunned so many overnight. This sweeping operation carrying out in the overnight hours, not only striking Venezuela's military right in the heart of Caracas, but capturing the country's president as well. This morning, the United States launching an extraordinary nighttime attack on Venezuela. Dramatic video capturing the U.S. strikes overnight. Explosions ringing out in Venezuela's capital city beginning just before 2 a.m. local time. The night sky above Caracas turning bright orange, massive flames engulfing the air. Those giant plumes of smoke seen from miles away. President Trump confirming the strikes and announcing the United States has captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Trump writing online, the United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. This operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement.
Que en la madrugada de hoy, 3 de enero,
Venezuela's defense minister, speaking from an unknown place, calling it the most criminal military aggression from the U.S. in the history of our country. The massive escalation coming after a significant U.S. military buildup in the region. The Pentagon striking more than 30 boats the U.S. alleges were involved in drug trafficking operations, at least 115 people killed since those strikes began on September 2nd. In a memo obtained by ABC News in October, the administration telling Congress that America is in armed conflict and that drug cartels are deemed unlawful combatants. President Maduro facing drug charges, including narco-terrorism conspiracy since Trump's first administration, after federal prosecutors alleged he deliberately used cocaine as a weapon. Back in 2020, U.S. officials telling Americans they plan to eventually gain custody of the Venezuelan leader. In recent days, more signs pointing to this latest attack. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the most advanced lethal aircraft carrier in the world, spotted on New Year's Day, seen in these satellite images, positioned closer to Venezuela's coast than it had ever been amidst the recent bout of tensions just some 200 miles away. And the FAA banning U.S. commercial flights in Venezuelan airspace for, quote, ongoing military activity ahead of the attack. Trump had warned that land strikes were imminent.
We'll start that on land, too. It's going to be starting on land pretty soon.
Saying in a recent interview with Politico that he wants to see Maduro gone.
So how far would you go to take Maduro out of office?
I don't want to say that, but
But you want to see him out?
His days are numbered.
Can you rule out an American ground invasion?
I don't want to rule in or out. I don't talk about it.
For his part, Maduro had said just one day ago that he was open to talks with the U.S., and in a separate pre-taped interview released Thursday, described a recent call the two had.
Nosotros hemos tenido, Ramón,
saying, I think that conversation was even pleasant, but the events following the conversation haven't been pleasant. Let's hope. And so that would be the last time Maduro was seen on camera on Venezuelan soil. Now as for what the U.S. does next, a Republican Senator Mike Lee out of Utah sharing that he spoke with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He anticipates, according to Mike Lee, no further action in Venezuela now that Maduro is in U.S. custody and that he is expected to stand trial in the U.S. Just a stunning series.
A stunning series of developments here. And Matt, I think one of the big questions is, who is running the country now?
And we don't know. That's the simple answer to that question. We heard from Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, who came out and said she wasn't running the country officially, that she still believes Maduro is the rightful president. She's demanding the U.S. show them some kind of proof of life. There is a state of emergency that's been declared in the country. But the simple fact is these are very tense times in Venezuela right now. And for the people of Venezuela, we should be remembering them always. This is a very difficult time. They don't know, even if they weren't fans of Maduro, they don't know what's coming next.
And that is what we will be watching to see. Matt Rivers, our thanks to you. Meanwhile, President Trump taking to his Truth Social platform to confirm the operation. ABC senior White House correspondent Selena Wang traveling with the president in Mar-a-Lago. Selena, we're going to hear from the president later this morning, but overnight he reportedly called this a brilliant operation.
That's right, Janae. I mean, this is a stunning announcement from President Trump. He's been escalating his threats against Nicolas Maduro for months, but the scale of this operation was unexpected. And as you say, the president making the announcement himself that the U.S. has captured Maduro and his wife and that they've been flown out of the country. We're also learning this morning from a source that the president had given the green light to capture Maduro several days ago, and that troops are ready to go on Christmas Day, but that the operation was delayed because of U.S. strikes against ISIS targets in Nigeria. In a brief interview with the New York Times this morning, Trump praised the mission, saying, quote, a lot of good planning and a lot of great troops and great people. It was a brilliant operation, actually. We're also hearing this morning from the Deputy Secretary of State, who is also posting this morning, quote, a new dawn for Venezuela. The tyrant is gone. He will now finally face justice for his crimes. Now, at this moment, we don't know where Maduro is being taken, what charges he could face, but he does face those drug charges in the U.S. from 2020. All of this coming after months of escalating U.S. pressure on Venezuela. The U.S. has amassed the largest military presence in the Caribbean in decades, including deploying the world's largest aircraft carrier. And Trump has been for weeks threatening these land strikes inside Venezuela. The president telling me just weeks ago that they were coming very soon, that they know every house, every route, and where these drugs are manufactured, Janae.
And there are still so many questions. We're hoping to learn more, Selena, as the president, we mentioned earlier, giving that news conference later this morning.
Yeah, the president says that news conference is happening at 11 a.m. here in Florida at Mar-a-Lago. And the key questions are still outstanding. For one, was Congress notified? Are U.S. troops still on the ground in Venezuela? And critically, what is next for the country? What is President Trump's vision for that country? For weeks now, President Trump has said all of this is about going after drug traffickers, but it is clear now that this is about far more than that. Janae.
All right, Selena Wang, our thanks to you there in Florida. Whip.
And Janae, let's bring in ABC's Chief Global Affairs Correspondent Martha Raddatz and ABC News contributor, retired Colonel Steve Ganyard. Good morning to you both. Thanks for joining us. Martha, I do want to start with you. I know you've been talking to your sources this morning. What more are you learning about how this operation was carried out?
Well, Whit, I think we have to go back to just those scenes in Caracas with U.S. helicopters, Chinook helicopters, and attack helicopters sweeping over the city. Those explosions, likely at airfields and military facilities, and Delta Force, that elite Delta Force going in and grabbing Maduro and his wife in the dead of night. You can imagine they were probably asleep. And how this operation was carried out exactly, we do not not know. They were clearly well prepared. They knew exactly where to find Maduro and his wife. We are told by sources that the CIA had perfect intelligence as to where they were, and that clearly was the case since they did capture them. We also don't know whether others were involved on the ground, whether the CIA perhaps had assets, whether he called in and said, I'm going to surrender. We do not know those details at this point, but Delta Force had a successful mission. They went in, they grabbed Maduro. Whether he surrendered or not, we do not know, but it certainly did seem a great surprise. And with those military assets, it tells you that Maduro did not know what was coming, and he was flown out of the country. I think it's highly unlikely there are still forces on the ground. Generally, these missions are done, and the Delta Force and the others are out of there. But those scenes from Caracas and those explosions and the smoke rising from that city are remarkable indeed, Whit.
Yes, they are, absolutely. Let's bring in Colonel Steve Ganyard. And Steve, President Maduro, as we noted there, and his wife both captured. Where could they be taken, and what happens next?
Yeah, Whit, probably, you saw in the video there, you saw those special operations helicopters, so they probably would have put him on one of the special operations, the Army Delta Force helicopters, and flown him offshore. Now, whether they had enough gas to get all the way out to where the USS Ford, the aircraft carrier, is, that's a question. But from the Ford, they can fly him all the way to the United States, perhaps stopping in Roosevelt Roads in Puerto Rico, where the U.S. buildup has been most apparent. But right now, it becomes a law enforcement issue, and he will be tried based on those the indictment back in 2020. So this may be, as Secretary Rubio said, this may be the end of the military action or what was necessary. No doubt the U.S. will keep the forces offshore to make sure that probably the next step is going to be free and fair elections. Remember that one of the opposition leaders was just awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo, and so the hope here is that the Venezuelan people could actually have an elected leader.
And Martha, a foreign leader captured, flown out of the country. Just how unprecedented is an operation like this from the U.S. perspective?
Well, I think we remember back to 1990 in Panama. Manuel Noriega was taken by U.S. troops. That was an invasion of Panama, however, and Manuel Noriega was not ever really the elected president. He was a military dictator. He eventually surrendered. He went to the embassy, the Holy See Embassy, the Vatican Embassy, and hid out there for about 10 days before he surrendered. I also want to bring up Juan Hernandez, who was in Honduras, and he was convicted of drug trafficking. In fact, the Justice Department said he was at the center of the largest and most violent drug trafficking conspiracy in the world, helping to bring 400 tons of cocaine into the U.S. He was recently given a full pardon at the end of November by President Trump. So we have that convicted criminal who was released by President Trump, and now overnight, this arrest and capture of Venezuela's president.
Yeah, we've seen a number of people pointing out that contradiction. And Steve, the Trump administration also has accused Maduro himself of narco-terrorism. Why then has there been this recent escalation with Venezuela?
Well, the Trump administration has an idea that they call the Trump corollary, and that is an extension of the old Monroe Doctrine. That is a re-emphasis on security in the Western Hemisphere. And so the White House sees Venezuela as the source of many problems, not only in South America, not only in the Western Hemisphere, but around the world because of their connections to Hezbollah, to the oil that gets shipped offshore and helps keep the Russian war machine going in Ukraine. And so given the connection between drugs and illicit oil transfers, the administration says now is the time to stop this, because the next step is where does the Cuban situation fit into all this, which is also propped up by Venezuelan oil.
And how the country will run and what happens to the people of Venezuela. Many questions going forward. Steve Ganyard, Martha Raddatz, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Gio?
All right, Whit, and as you can imagine, members of Congress are watching the developments very, very closely, and ABC's Jay O'Brien is on Capitol Hill right now getting their reaction. Jay, good morning. What are they saying?
Gio, good morning. There were some questions overnight from some of the president's own party about the rationale for this operation. After he posted a tweet expressing concern about the justification for all this, Utah Republican Mike Lee then posted that he got a call from Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who told him that this was a kind of law enforcement operation to go in, arrest Maduro, bring him back to the U.S. to stand trial. And according to what Rubio told Lee, those airstrikes that were seen were meant as cover for those U.S. personnel as they went in to conduct that operation. And according to what the secretary told the senator, he doesn't anticipate any further military operations in Venezuela at this hour. We are hearing from other members of Congress now who are being briefed by the administration. By law, Congress has 48 hours. It must be briefed within 48 hours of a military operation like this. Some Democrats, though, at this hour are crying foul, saying that Congress did not authorize military action in Venezuela. Some Democrats going so far as to call this illegal. Remember, Congress constitutionally is the only branch of government with the power to declare war, although the president does have some military powers. Over the last few weeks, we've seen Democrats repeatedly bring resolutions to the floor on both the House and Senate trying to curtail President Trump's military powers when it comes to Venezuela, but Republicans have largely banded together to block those efforts. Janae.
All right, Jay O'Brien, there will be so many questions that we are hoping to get answered later today. Our thanks to you. Meanwhile, the extraordinary nighttime operation naturally could be raising some security concerns here at home. So we're going to check in now with ABC's senior investigative reporter, Aaron Katersky. No immediate threats, but this is always the case after something like this.
Absolutely. And we have so far heard, Janae, of no threat, specific or otherwise, as a result of this military operation. But anytime the United States takes any kind of military action, there is a risk that somebody here at home could take it as a cue to act out. And just yesterday, for example, the FBI charged an 18-year-old in North Carolina with plotting an ISIS-inspired mass stabbing attack in Charlotte. And the FBI said the teen was motivated by recent U.S. strikes in Syria. Of late, the Trump administration has also focused on the criminal street gang Tren de Aragua that has roots in Venezuela. Federal prosecutors in New York charged its purported leader with racketeering conspiracy and supporting terrorism. And as you've heard, Maduro himself faces narco-terrorism charges in the United States. Those were first brought in 2020 when federal prosecutors here in New York accused him of partnering with a Colombian rebel group to flood the United States with cocaine in order to undermine the health and well-being of the nation. At the time those charges were brought, prosecutors said the Maduro regime is awash in corruption and criminality. This has to come to an end. It now appears this is the end of Maduro's reign. The way it was achieved, though, guys, will put law enforcement in this country on alert for any possible reprisals.
All right, Aaron Katersky for us. Thanks so much. We appreciate it. And if there's also swift reaction coming in from the international community around the world, let's turn to ABC's Tom Soufi-Burridge for that part of the story. Tom, good morning.
Good morning, Whit. Yeah, reaction from world leaders and governments to events in Venezuela now streaming in. The president of Colombia, one of Venezuela's largest neighbors, saying Caracas is, quote, under attack. But a key Trump ally in South America, Argentinian President Javier Milei, celebrating the U.S. military action. Milei writing on X, long live freedom. The European Union's foreign policy chief, who speaks for many traditional U.S. allies on the continent where I am, striking a cautious tone, saying the EU is closely monitoring the situation in Venezuela and repeating the EU's position that Nicolas Maduro lacks legitimacy and calling for a, quote, peaceful transition of power in Caracas. The Turkish government of President Erdogan, another close friend of the Trump administration, condemning U.S. action, calling it, quote, banditry, and expressing support for the Venezuelan government. Of course, Russia has been a long-time ally and backer of Nicolas Maduro's regime. Moscow condemning the U.S. operation as a, quote, act of armed aggression and saying Caracas must be allowed to determine its own destiny. Iran, another regime with ties to Maduro, condemning the U.S. action, as is Cuba. The government in Havana calling for an urgent reaction from the international community. But, guys, we should get a more fuller reaction from U.S. allies like the UK and France to these very significant developments in the coming hours. Gio?
Yeah, I'm sure we will be hearing from them very, very soon. Tom, thank you so much. And coming up, of course, we will have much more on the large-scale strike in Venezuela.
Still ahead here, much more on the U.S. strikes in Venezuela. Also, what investigators believe may have ignited a deadly inferno at a ski resort in the Swiss Swiss Alps.
Plus, dramatic video of a parachutist's close call during a college football pregame show.
And Saturday showdown, the high-stakes games just hours away in the NFL with division titles on the line. Stick around. You're watching Good Morning America on this Saturday morning. And welcome back to GMA. Here are more stories we're following here on this Saturday morning. The FBI says it foiled a potential ISIS-inspired terror plot. Officials say 18-year-old Christian Sturdivant sought to go on a knife attack at a grocery store in North Carolina on New Year's Eve. Investigators reportedly found weapons and an attack plan in his home. Agents say that they have been keeping tabs on Sturdivant since he was 14 years old.
The search for a third mountain lion following a suspected deadly attack in Colorado. 2 people found a hiker dead on a trail outside Denver Thursday. Authorities shot one lion on the trail and later euthanized a second lion. Officials say mountain lion attacks are incredibly rare.
A massive fire tears through a construction site in Denver, Colorado. The flames erupting at a 3-story apartment complex Friday night. The fire growing to 5 alarms and spreading the length of an entire city block. One firefighter was injured. No word yet on what sparked the fire.
And take a look at this, a close call for a parachutist in Fort Worth, Texas. The skydiver was part of pregame festivities at a bowl game. The parachute gets caught in the netting. The stuntman then crashing to the ground. Bowl officials say he got up and walked away on his own.
All right, well, we do start this half hour with more on the extraordinary nighttime operation in Venezuela. The U.S. conducting a large-scale strike and capturing the country's president and his wife. Let's go back to ABC's Matt Rivers, who joined us again. Good morning, Matt. This was extraordinary to learn about the strike, but then hearing that Maduro was captured.
Just stunning. And I think what we've been seeing over the past couple months, the very clear U.S. military buildup, the threats from Trump against Maduro, it was clear something was going to happen, but what played out overnight, I think, took so many people by surprise. The U.S. launching what appeared to be a complex operation, striking multiple Venezuelan military sites right in the heart of the capital city of Caracas. All the while, according to President Trump, capturing President Nicolas Maduro and his wife. The president saying the couple were flown out of the country. Not clear yet where they will go, but it's worth reminding everyone that Maduro had been accused by the U.S. government of drug trafficking for years now in federal court, and prosecutors have long sought his arrest to confront him with those charges. And all of this playing out in just a few hours. The people of Venezuela, people I've been talking to there, are frankly stunned. The strongman leader who ruled Venezuela for well over a decade is now out. And for many, there will be a lot of joy and relief that he is gone. Venezuela overwhelmingly voted for the opposition candidate in last year's elections, only to have those results changed by Maduro in what was widely seen as a fraudulent election. So yes, happiness for many, but also there is great trepidation about what comes next. Who will run the government? What kind of transition might there be? How does the economy hold up? How do people just go about and live their day-to-day lives? There are massive questions, guys, not just for the future here, not to mention all the questions that we still have about the actual operation that took place here. The logistics involved alone, just head-scratching, to say the least.
But as you said, stunning is the word. Matt Rivers, thank you so much. And the capture of Venezuela's president, a culmination of a months-long campaign by President Trump to oust him. So let's go ahead and bring in ABC's chief global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz, along with ABC News contributor, retired Colonel Steve Ganyard. Thank you both for staying with us here. Steve, let's start with you. Russia, China, other adversaries, they're of course going to be watching this very, very closely. So what could we see in terms of their response?
Well, I don't think they'll do anything physically, Gio, but they are not going to be very happy. So China buys oil from Venezuela at about a 20 to 30% discount. So they get discounted oil, they get discounted gas. The Russians have been using their so-called shadow fleet of tankers to move oil around the world to help fund their efforts in Ukraine. So neither the country is going to be happy, but at this point, with Maduro gone, there's not much that they can complain about. Hopefully from here on in, we see free and fair elections in Venezuela and allowing the Venezuelan people to rule their country rather than the strongman Maduro.
And Martha, on the ground there in Venezuela, what do you think the reaction could be there? How might the Venezuelan military respond?
Well, that's what everybody is watching at this point, how the Venezuelan military responds. Steve makes the good case that could happen here, that they have free and fair elections. But this is a very precarious few days and few weeks to see exactly what the aftermath is after that stunning raid into Caracas with those helicopters that you see there now, attack helicopters, Chinook helicopters, those large helicopters, really close to 10, I think, of those Chinook helicopters alone, plus the attacked helicopters and those explosions at the airfields. So what happens now? As you say, many people will be very, very happy that Maduro is gone, but we don't know exactly what will happen with the military, and that is something the U.S. is keeping a very, very close eye on. But the hopes are that this was a perfect operation, and things go, as Colonel Ganyard explained, that they do have free and fair elections, and relations are back to normal there.
And Steve, as you know, Venezuela has massive oil reserves. Could that be a factor here?
Most definitely. Oil means money, and the Maduro regime, Gio, has run off of two things, cocaine and oil. And so now that the oil has been quarantined and the oil is not flowing to places like Cuba, which are fundamentally dependent on Venezuelan oil, this will have repercussions throughout the hemisphere and to probably the two countries that the president has said are the biggest troublemakers, and that is Venezuela and Cuba. Both now are very tenuous. We'll see how this plays out, as how the administration handles this going forward.
And Martha, for months we've seen those boat strikes and, of course, the drug war as a whole. Does it stop? Does it continue? What do we think?
You know, that's a big question, Gio. We have obviously gone after these suspected drug boats, more than 30 of them at this point, killing more than 120 people on those boats. And it was a very lethal week this last week. Killed about 15 people in just the last week. They did look for some survivors in one of those boat strikes, but they never found them. So whether those continue, that is something we'll have to see, because you can't imagine the drug trade is going to instantly stop, Jill.
All right, Martha Raddatz, Steve Ganyard, thank you both for joining us on this huge breaking news story. We appreciate it.
All right, Gio, we're going to bring in our chief investigative correspondent, Aaron Katersky, who's back with us now. Aaron, I understand you're getting some new information.
New information comes from the United States Attorney General Pam Bondi, who confirms that Nicolas Maduro, as we've been reporting, has been indicted here in New York City in federal narco-terrorism charges. There is also a new superseding indictment that he is going to face. So in all likelihood, sources are telling ABC News Maduro is on his way here to New York in order to face those charges, expected to land, we would think, at some point today. When he will appear in court is not yet clear. The exact charges are coming from Pam Bondi's social media account, and if I may, saying Nicolas Maduro has been charged with narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, a number of weapons offenses, and will soon face, she says, the full wrath of American justice on American soil in American courts. That court is likely to be the Southern District of New York here in Manhattan.
And one thing just to clarify, because you've been reporting on this before, Maduro had been charged in the U.S. previously, right, under the first term under President Trump. So how do these new superseding charges relate to that?
We'll wait to see what's unsealed, if anything new is unsealed. But at the time, then Attorney General Bill Barr said that the country of Venezuela under the Maduro regime was awash in corruption. He said he was trying to use cocaine as a weapon to harm the United States. And Bill Barr said at the time, this must end. And it now appears this is the end. And under now the second Trump administration, Nicolas Maduro is going to face those charges in an American court here in New York.
All right, Aaron Katersky, thank you so much for these updated developments. We appreciate it. Now on GMA, as we follow the tragic New Year's fire at a Swiss ski resort, the death toll now reaching 40, with more than 100 people injured. And we have a new look at how the fire in the bar filled with revelers may have started. ABC News foreign correspondent Tom Sufi Burridge is in Switzerland with the very latest. Tom, good morning.
Good morning, Whit. You can see the tributes behind me. Officials here in Switzerland now say they believe that deadly inferno was started by sparklers carried through the bar and held too close to the ceiling.
This morning, horrifying new video showing the moment flames begin engulfing a packed bar in the Swiss Alps. The video shot by a boy who was severely injured as that New Year's celebration turned to horror. Earlier you can see celebratory sparklers and the orange glow above them, where part of the ceiling appears to have just caught on fire. Swiss officials now say the inferno, which killed 40 young people and injured 120 others, was likely caused by those sparklers, carried with drinks orders and held too close to the ceiling. Investigators now poring over video from that fateful night. Panic as the fire quickly consumed the bar, one man seen desperately trying to put the blaze out. Leticia with a desperate appeal for any information about her 16-year-old son Arthur, who texted her from the bar.
Je sais pas s'il est reconnaissable, je sais pas. Tout ce que je veux, c'est retrouver mon enfant.
His last message, Happy New Year, Mum, I love you. And Gregory telling us his best friend Thailand is also missing.
Maybe he's dying in the fire, maybe he's alive.
The authorities here still working to identify the deceased and injured. Some of the worst injured transferred to expert burn units in neighbouring countries. This ski resort community grieving for so many young lives lost.
Guys, the owners of the bar telling Swiss media, quote, everything was done according to the standards. The local prosecutor in this region saying the owners have been cooperating with the investigation, which will now examine the fire safety conditions at the venue on that fateful night. Whit?
All right, Tom Sufi Burridge for us. Thank you.
All right, an awful story. To the NFL now, and the must-win games happening today as the playoff picture takes shape. ABC's Andrew Dimbert has a look at our Saturday doubleheader, including the Battle of the Bye.
This weekend, a pair of high-stakes Saturday showdowns.
Touchdown, Seattle!
As the NFL regular season comes to a close.
Touchdown, San Francisco!
First up, an NFC South clash with the division title and the final playoff spot in the conference up for grabs when the Carolina Panthers take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
And that's going to be a Panthers touchdown!
A Panthers win or tie will crown them division champs and send the Panthers to the postseason for the first time since 2017.
I don't think that anyone in the South, NFC South, thought Carolina Panthers and obviously the Tampa Bay Buccaneers would be playing the last game to see who gets in the playoffs, right? Every year brings on opportunity and disappointment as well.
If the Bucs win, they'll need some help from the New Orleans Saints, who've long been eliminated from playoff contention. The Saints would still have to beat the Falcons Sunday to give Tampa a postseason berth.
That's a Buccaneer touchdown!
But perhaps the biggest game is tonight between the Seattle Seahawks and the red-hot San Francisco 49ers. San Fran's starting QB Brock Purdy, who spent most of the year hurt, is back and looking sharper than ever.
Purdy steps up. Purdy tucks it, runs inside the 10, down to the 5.
While Seahawks signal caller Sam Darnold just became only the 5th QB ever to have back-to-back 13-win seasons.
Darnold, one-on-one, Smith and Jigba!
Both teams already punched their ticket to the postseason, but winner tonight is crowned division champion, and with it, best record in the NFC, the #1 overall seed, and the lone bye week in the first round.
This might be the best division in football, but the 49ers, if they can win this Saturday, they would get all their home games and all their games at home all the way through the Super Bowl. It's kind of ironic because the Super Bowl is in their stadium in Santa Clara.
Bucs Carolina kicks off at 4:30 Eastern. Niners Seahawks at 8 p.m. Eastern, both on ABC, guys. I know you're looking forward to the Niners game.
It's a late game for me, but yeah, we're going to have to stay up. Got to do it.
A big weekend of sports. All right, Andrew, thanks so much, and we'll be right back. Good morning, America. Breaking news overnight. U.S. attack on Venezuela. Explosions rock the capital of Caracas. Smoke seen rising from the blast. President Trump confirming the U.S. has successfully carried out a large-scale strike. President Maduro and his wife have been captured and flown out of the country. Now, how they tracked him down, the elite American Special Operations Forces on the ground.
The U.S. Embassy warning U.S. citizens to shelter in place. Parts of the city reported to be without power after the extraordinary nighttime operation. The FAA banning U.S. commercial flights in the airspace nearby. Venezuela calling it, quote, an imperialist attack and urging citizens to take to the streets.
The strikes following months of military buildup in the region. The USS Gerald Ford aircraft carrier and other warships there. And the U.S. launching dozens of deadly strikes on alleged drug boats, killing more than 110 people. Now the big questions amid this major escalation. How was the operation carried out? Where are President Maduro and his wife now? Who's in control of Venezuela? And what happens next? We have team coverage this morning.
Live from ABC News headquarters in New York City, this is Good Morning America.
And Good Morning America, it's great to have you with us. We are staying on top of this breaking news. The U.S. carrying out what it calls a large-scale strike on Venezuela, a series of explosions targeting the capital city of Caracas overnight.
And President Trump is also confirming that President Nicolas Maduro and his wife were captured and flown out of the country. Sources telling ABC News Maduro and his wife are on their way to New York. Aaron Katersky is standing by with more on that in just a moment.
Yes, the stunning developments marking months of escalating military actions, including attacks on those suspected drug vessels. We have team coverage looking at every part of this story, including what we're learning about how the operation was carried out with U.S. elite special operations forces on the ground. ABC's Matt Rivers leads us off. Matt, as we said, this has been leading up for months, all signs pointing to something happening, but still stunning. What did occur?
This took so many people by surprise. We'd seen all those military forces build up in this region for so long that we knew something like this was a possibility. But what we saw overnight, this incredible complex attack carried out by the United States in Caracas, right in the heart of the Venezuelan government's operating capacity, truly stunning. This morning, the United States launching an extraordinary nighttime attack on Venezuela. Dramatic video capturing the U.S. strikes overnight. Explosions ringing out in Venezuela's capital city beginning just before 2 a.m. local time. The night sky above Caracas turning bright orange, massive flames engulfing the air. Those giant plumes of smoke seen from miles away. President Trump confirming the strikes and announcing the United States has captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Trump writing online, the United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. This operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. Venezuela's defense minister, speaking from an unknown place, calling it the most criminal military aggression from the U.S. in the history of our country. The massive escalation coming after a significant U.S. military buildup in the region. The Pentagon striking more than 30 boats the U.S. alleges were involved in drug trafficking operations, at least 115 people killed since those strikes began on September 2nd. In a memo obtained by ABC News in October, the administration telling Congress that America is in armed conflict and that drug cartels are deemed unlawful combatants. President Maduro facing drug charges, including narco-terrorism conspiracy since Trump's first administration, after federal prosecutors alleged he deliberately used cocaine as a weapon. Back in 2020, U.S. officials telling Americans they plan to eventually gain custody of the Venezuelan leader. In recent days, more signs pointing to this latest attack. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the most advanced lethal aircraft carrier in the world, spotted on New Year's Day, seen in these satellite images, positioned closer to Venezuela's coast than it had ever been amidst the recent bout of tensions just some 200 miles away. And the FAA banning U.S. commercial flights in Venezuelan airspace for, quote, ongoing military activity ahead of the attack. Trump had warned that land strikes were imminent.
We'll start that on land, too. It's going to be starting on land pretty soon.
Saying in a recent interview with Politico that he wants to see Maduro gone.
So how far would you go to take Maduro out of office?
I don't want to say that,
But you want to see him out?
His days are numbered.
Can you rule out an American ground invasion?
I don't want to rule in or out. I don't talk about it.
For his part, Maduro had said just one day ago that he was open to talks with the U.S., and in a separate pre-taped interview released Thursday, described a recent call the two had.
Nosotros hemos tenido, Ramón,
saying, I think that conversation was even pleasant, but the events following the conversation haven't been pleasant. Let's hope. And here you can see some live pictures that we have from Venezuela at the moment. People out in the streets reacting in real time, quite frankly, to this stunning turn of events. That interview that you saw with Maduro was the last time he was seen on camera on Venezuelan soil. Now, crucially, as for what the U.S. does next, a Republican Senator Mike Lee out of Utah sharing that he spoke with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Rubio anticipating, quote, no further action in Venezuela now that Maduro is in U.S. custody, end quote, and that he is expected to stand trial in the United States.
And we will be watching so many of these pictures, Matt, as we are watching to see what happens next. But in the meantime, who's running the country now?
We're not totally sure. What we do know is that Maduro was not a one-man government. Some key figures in his administration still appear to be in power, including his vice president, the defense secretary. But clearly he was the leader, and where this goes next is truly anyone's guess.
Again, these live pictures coming in right now, a mix of reactions, obviously, from the people there in Venezuela. We'll be tracking all of that. Matt, thank you.
All right, and we are learning now that President Maduro is being flown to New York to face a whole host of charges here in the U.S. And you've been following this, Aaron, ABC's senior investigative correspondent, Aaron Katursky. What are you learning right now?
Sources are telling us here at ABC News, Gio, that Nicolas Maduro is on his way here to New York, where he has faced federal narco-terrorism charges since 2020. Just a short time ago, Attorney General Pam Bondi said on social media Maduro and now also his wife have been indicted in the Southern District of New York on charges including narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, and a number of weapons offenses. Bondi said Maduro and his wife will soon face the full wrath of American justice. At the time the charges were brought against Maduro 6 years ago, federal prosecutors accused him of using cocaine as a weapon against the United States. The original indictment said Maduro colluded with a rebel militia group in Colombia to flood the United States with cocaine, and along the way corrupted Venezuelan institutions to line his pockets with drug money. Federal prosecutors said back in 2020 that Venezuela was awash in corruption. This must end. Now it appears it has.
All right, Aaron Katursky, thank you so much. Let's, of course, President Trump did confirm the operation on his Truth Social platform. Let's get more now from ABC's senior White House correspondent, Selena Wang, who is traveling with the president near Mar-a-Lago. Selena, good morning.
And Whit, good morning to you. I mean, this was a stunning announcement from President Trump. He'd been escalating his threats against Nicolas Maduro for months, but the scale of this operation was not expected. And as you say, President Trump taking to Truth Social to make this announcement himself that the U.S. has captured Maduro and his wife and that they're being flown out of the country. We're also learning from a source this morning that Trump had actually given the green light to capture Maduro several days ago and that troops were actually ready to go on Christmas Day, but that it was delayed because of those U.S. strikes on ISIS targets in Nigeria. In a brief interview with the New York Times this morning, the president praised the mission, saying, quote, a lot of good planning and a lot of great troops and great people. It was a brilliant operation, actually. Now, all of this comes after months of escalating U.S. pressure on Venezuela, including the U.S. amassing the largest military presence in the Caribbean in decades, including deploying the world's largest aircraft carrier. Trump has also been threatening for weeks now that land strikes would be coming soon inside Venezuela. The president telling me last month that they're coming very soon, that they know every route, every house, and where these drugs are manufactured. And also, Gio, there's going to be a press conference at 11 a.m. here in Florida at Mar-a-Lago. We'll expect a lot more details to be shared at that time.
And many will be looking at that 11 a.m. press conference. All right, Selena Wang, thank you for your reporting. And members of Congress are watching the developments very closely now, and they are weighing in. ABC's Jay O'Brien on Capitol Hill right now, getting reaction from Democrats and Republicans. Jay, good morning.
Good morning, Gio. We've started to hear from some congressional Republicans at this hour who have been briefed on the details of this operation by Secretary of State Marco Rubio. They describe Rubio telling them that this was a U.S. operation to go in, arrest Maduro and his wife, bring them back here to the U.S. to stand trial. And according to what Rubio told these members of Congress, these strikes that we saw, those airstrikes, were meant to protect the U.S. military personnel who are carrying out this operation. Rubio telling those members of Congress that he's he's briefed that he doesn't anticipate additional U.S. military operations in Venezuela at this hour. It's unclear if any Democrats have been briefed. We've only heard so far from Republicans. By law, the administration has within 48 hours to notify top leaders of both parties up here on Capitol Hill of any military operation, this included. And some Democrats at this hour are crying foul, some saying that this operation is, in their words, illegal because Congress has not authorized military action in Venezuela. Congress, remember, constitutionally is the only branch of government with the power to declare war, although the president does have broad war powers. Over the last few weeks, we've seen Democrats repeatedly bring resolutions up here on the floor of the House and the Senate trying to curtail President Trump's military powers when it comes to Venezuela. And Republicans, while some have expressed concerns, have largely blocked those efforts, guys.
Jay O'Brien, thanks so much. Coming up here, we'll have the latest on U.S. strikes in Venezuela.
Yep, and then we're going to switch gears to our GMA cover story about the hype around testosterone replacement therapy, what to know about the purported benefits and side effects, and who should consider the treatment.
And we'll have the NFL playoff picture. ESPN's Sam Acho is going to join us live. You're watching GMA on this Saturday night.
Welcome back to GMA. More now on the U.S. attack on Venezuela. Let's bring in Mick Mulroy, ABC News national security and defense analyst. He's also a retired U.S. Marine, retired CIA, and worked as a deputy assistant secretary of defense in President Trump's first term. And also with us, ABC News contributor, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Doug Lute, who served in the White House and later as U.S. ambassador to NATO. Mick, I'd like to start with you if we could here. So some are already raising questions about the legality of this military campaign and the capture of Maduro and his wife. What evidence has the administration laid out to justify this response?
So certainly there is some questions both internally under U.S. law and externally under international law from both parties in the United States and both adversaries and allies overseas. But I do think the administration is going to point to the fact that Maduro is indicted. And essentially this was a law enforcement operation, much like the operation back in the 90s from Manuel Noriega in Panama, who was brought back to the United States and prosecuted and incarcerated. So I think that is where they're going to stand on the legality of this, but certainly there's still going to be some questions to that.
Yeah, especially law enforcement, but with special forces, Delta Force involved here. General Lute, let's bring you in. What can you tell us about what likely went into the planning and execution of this operation?
Well, all such military operations and the planning for these operations begins at the objective, and that is at the precise location of Maduro himself, the sorts of security surrounding him, and so forth. So I think first and foremost, the success of this operation from a military perspective points to the fact that we had very good, solid, reliable intelligence. And then the planning from there just proceeds backwards, all the way to the point from the launch points to the objective and back again.
And Mick, so many questions about the transition of power here. Who's going to run the government? Could U.S. troops potentially be involved to protect who the next leader may be? What do we know about that and what could come next?
Well, it's plausible. I mean, the president's announced that there was a covert action program by the CIA in Venezuela. That likely helped produce the outcome today, both preparation of the battle space, so to speak, and certainly the intelligence that General Lute just referenced that really helped this exceptionally professional operation to be carried out. But the next phase is really the end game. The regime is still in place. So Maduro is gone, but the remnants of the regime is still in place, and that could still be very problematic to the United States, the whole reason why this operation was launched in the first place. So how do we transition to an administration that's legitimately elected and is more friendly to the United States and less friendly to, say, Russia, China, and Iran? That is a big question, and I think that's what comes after this. We'll just have to see how it plays out, but I think the United States is still going to be looking at this as a hostile regime until that occurs.
Yeah, and what kind of long-term commitment that could end up being. General Lute, back to you here. We know the administration has accused President Maduro of narco-terrorism, but why this recent escalation with Venezuela?
Well, I think this points very much to the recently published national security strategy by the by the Trump administration, and which for the first time in decades placed a fresh focus on U.S. interests in the Western Hemisphere. So clearly, Venezuela presents one of the big security challenges in our hemisphere, and this military action, alongside the strikes on the so-called narco-terrorist boats in and around the Caribbean, points to the fact that the administration is increasingly focused here at home and in our hemisphere.
Dozens of strikes on those boats, more than 100 people killed. General Lieutenant Mick Mulroy, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Janae?
And we'll have much more on the unfolding situation there in Venezuela coming up.
Now to our GMA cover story and the growing popularity of testosterone replacement therapy. The global market is expected to reach nearly $500 million over the next 4 years. But while social media is flooded with influencers touting the purported benefits, experts warn it's not for everyone and people should consider the potential risks.
Let's talk testosterone.
The hype around testosterone replacement therapy, known as TRT, is everywhere. From social media influencers to celebrity endorsements like Josh Duhamel, Halle Berry, and others. Even Steve Martin's character in Hulu's Only Murders in the Building.
I'm taking testosterone. What?
Testosterone prescriptions soaring 50% over the last 5 years.
How much would you say testosterone therapy has changed your life?
It's done a full 180. I'm a completely different person.
Life-changing. I think I turned back the clock.
Maria Mueller and Sammy Irizarry are both patients of Dr. Jan Zislis.
This is a good option.
A concierge physician in New York and an advocate for testosterone treatment in older adults when used responsibly.
We don't want to be normal. I want you to be optimal. I want you to be at your best version of yourself.
But despite purported benefits, including muscle growth, increased energy, and libido for some, experts warn it's not for everyone and should only be used under the care of a qualified doctor.
You would acknowledge there are risks, and this treatment is not for everybody.
Correct. One size does not fit all. So you need to take a very detailed history. You need to understand the goals of treatment.
There is no FDA-approved use for testosterone in women, and it's only approved in men who have clinically low levels of the hormone and have certain symptoms like reduced energy or depressed mood. Both the FDA and the Endocrine Society caution against off-label use for things like performance enhancement or anti-aging.
Don't fall for the notion that it's a magical remedy. Testosterone will not benefit you if you're a man and you have a normal blood testosterone for really any purpose. But there are real risks if you take testosterone for many months or years and you don't have testosterone deficiency.
Potential side effects include acne, sleep apnea, high blood pressure, and infertility in men, while women risk excess hair growth and voice deepening. And TRT can eventually lower your body's natural production of testosterone. Still, many people swear by the results. Sammy is 42 years old, and after suffering a stroke, he was seeking a major change in his overall health and well-being. He turned to diet, exercise, and testosterone therapy.
I'm super energetic now, even all around more cheerful, less draggy. I'm down 76 pounds. I'm definitely building muscle. My clothes are fitting much better.
At 60 years old, Maria says she lost 80 pounds in 3 years and insists testosterone and other hormone therapies played a significant role in her transformation.
Obviously, exercise and diet
Exercise,
part of that.
diet are part of it, but I think that what happens is that when you start getting your energy back and start feeling good, everything builds on each other. I wanted to eat right because I felt better.
And an FDA panel recently voted to recommend easing restrictions on testosterone replacement therapy, which could make it more accessible to some people. But there's growing concern about some clinics, especially online, over-prescribing these therapies without oversight. So it's critical to consult a qualified physician because TRT requires regular evaluation and monitoring to be administered safely. This is not something like just a pill that you can quickly
set it
take.
and forget it, yeah.
Exactly. You need to have a doctor overseeing your treatment.
So and it's been being talked about so much more, so a really good, important piece.
Yeah.
Thank you, Whit. Stick around. More coming up on Good Morning America.
And we are back now on GMA into the NFL and the must-win games happening today as the playoff picture takes shape. And ABC's Andrew Dimber joins us with what's on tap. Good morning, Andrew.
Hey, good morning. So we have this Saturday doubleheader, right? And it's going to have ripple effects across the entire NFC. On one hand, the last playoff spot hangs in the balance. On the other, seeding, the all-important bye week, and much-needed rest that comes with it after a grueling season.
This weekend, a pair of high-stakes Saturday showdowns.
Touchdown, Seattle!
As the NFL regular season comes to a close.
Touchdown! Francisco.
First up, an NFC South clash with the division title and the final playoff spot in the conference up for grabs when the Carolina Panthers take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
And that's going to be a Panthers touchdown.
A Panthers win or tie will crown them division champs and send the Panthers to the postseason for the first time since 2017.
I don't think that anyone in the South, NFC South, thought Carolina Panthers and obviously the Tampa Bay Buccaneers would be playing the last game to see who gets in the playoffs, right? Every year brings on opportunity and disappointment as well.
If the Bucs win, they'll need some help from the New Orleans Saints, who've long been eliminated from playoff contention. The Saints would still have to beat the Falcons Sunday to give Tampa a postseason berth.
That's a Buccaneer touchdown.
But perhaps the biggest game is tonight between the Seattle Seahawks and the red-hot San Francisco 49ers. San Fran's starting QB Brock Purdy, who spent most of the year hurt, is back and looking sharper than ever.
Purdy steps up. Purdy tucks it, runs inside the 10, down to the 5.
While Seahawks signal caller Sam Darnold just became only the 5th QB ever to have back-to-back 13-win seasons.
Darnold, one-on-one, Smith and Jigba!
Both teams already punched their ticket to the postseason, but winner tonight is crowned division champion, and with it, best record in the NFC, the #1 overall seed, and the lone bye week in the first round.
This might be the best division in football, but the 49ers, if they could win this Saturday, they would get all their home games and all their games at home all the way through the Super Bowl. It's kind of ironic because the Super Bowl is in their stadium in Santa Clara.
Remember, since the NFL switched to the 18-game regular season, only one team now gets a bye week. It used to be 2. You could argue that San Francisco needs it more, right? They've been banged up all year. Brock Purdy was hurt, and you're a Niners fan.
As a Niners fan, I would argue, but, yeah, they can use some time to recover from injuries, for sure.
We'll see what happens. Andrew, thank you so much. Now to more on those 2 big NFL games today. ESPN Sam Acho joins us with a look ahead and some insights. Sam, thank you for being with us. Let's start with the Panthers at the Buccaneers, because the Bucs, they're kind of hanging on by a thread here.
Yeah, the Bucs have lost 7 of their last 8 games. In the NFL, we would always say that winning is contagious, but losing is contagious as well. Tampa Bay's defense has struggled. Todd Bowles is their head coach, a guy who I played with, a defensive mind, but they've been injured on the defensive side of the ball. Their quarterback, Baker Mayfield, has been battling through injuries as well. And so if Tampa Bay wants to find a way to win and make the playoffs, they need to be more healthy at the quarterback position, led by Baker Mayfield, enough to get rid of some of those losing ways. It's been offense, it's been defense, it's been special teams. They've given games away.
All right, let's talk about tonight. The NFC West powerhouse is battling it out. The Seahawks versus my 49ers. Who do you think has the edge? We were talking about all the injuries the Niners have had.
I think San Francisco, the 49ers, do have the edge in this one. Brock Purdy's playing at an elite level, 10 touchdowns over the last 2 games, 5 apiece. But what that means, not just for Brock Purdy, is everyone on that team has an increased level of confidence. When I played in the NFL and had a quarterback who played like Brock Purdy, I thought that we could do no wrong and there was almost no way that we could lose. I understand that San Fran is battling injuries on the defensive side of the ball, but with Brock Purdy's level of confidence and their 6-game winning streak, Seattle has a 6-game winning streak as well. But I think that confidence from the quarterback position changes everything.
And then Sunday night, you have the Ravens and the Steelers, and they're fighting for that AFC North title.
They are, but here's the problem. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be without their star receiver, DK Metcalf, who's serving the second of a 2-game suspension. The reason why that's important is that the Steelers, in their first matchup a couple weeks ago with the Ravens, DK Metcalf had 7 catches for 148 yards, nearly 20 yards per catch, over 20 yards per catch. That's going to be a big-time loss for Pittsburgh. So I'm leaning towards the Baltimore Ravens winning this game and then making the playoffs.
And what about any other storylines that fans should be watching for on Sunday?
Well, the biggest one is who's going to be the #1 seed, specifically in the AFC. There's 3 teams battling for the #1 spot: the Denver Broncos, the New England Patriots. Those are 2 of the teams. And then, and lastly, really with those teams was with the Broncos. Broncos initially, if they win, they're in. The Patriots, they have to win and get some help. And then also the Jacksonville Jaguars need the Patriots and the Broncos to lose. So those 3 teams all have 12 or more wins. So much could change. If you don't get that 1 seed, you're going to be the 5 or the 6 seed. So a lot at stake this week. week.
Thank you so much, Sam. You know that meme of the woman with the math problem and she's trying to figure it out? That's what it feels like.
They go to the front.
Exactly. It's a lot to keep up with, Sam. We appreciate you for sorting through it all. And once again, the Bucs versus Carolina kickoff at 4:30 Eastern, then the 49ers and the Seahawks at 8 p.m. Eastern, both on ABC and ESPN. And we'll be right back here on GMA.
And now to the surge in flu cases. The CDC saying that numbers are sharply rising in most of the country. And ABC's Morgan Norwood is here with this. We're hearing about all these cases
Yeah,
now.
you know, chances are if you know someone who's sniffling or coughing, it might just be the flu. And the data backs us up. States are seeing the surge, and hospitals are also feeling the strain. According to the CDC, at least 7.5 million Americans have already been sick with the flu. And health experts are warning this morning, with several months still left in flu season, the cases could keep climbing.
This morning, flu cases surging from coast to coast. The number of patients hospitalized increasing by more than 65% in a week, with this season shaping up to be one of the most severe in recent years. More than half of the country seeing high or very high levels of flu-like illnesses, including New York, the state grappling with record hospitalizations and the highest number of infections in a single week since they started tracking the flu more than 2 decades ago.
This is the most we've ever recorded from the flu. So this is really quite a severe flu season right now.
Nationally, the CDC reporting at least 8 pediatric flu deaths this season and at least one more life lost this week. 5-year-old Micah Kim. His father had been pleading for prayers as Micah was on life support, sharing these videos online.
It caused him to go septic. He went into seizures, and the doctors are saying it's one of the most horrific cases of this virus they've ever seen in their life. It's very rare what happened to my son.
And on New Year's Day, Micah's dad posting this heart-wrenching update.
After fighting 11 long, hard days, Micah went home to the house of our father.
This year's aggressive surge largely driven by the new subclade K variant. Doctors warn cases could rise even more as people return to work and school following the holiday break.
What we're concerned about is this is a very early rise in severe flu, which means that we're not even well into flu season. Of course, the concern here is that our hospitals are going to be underwater, not only to treat those with influenza, but to treat all other cases.
And doctors say it is not too late to roll up your sleeve. The flu shot remains the strongest protection against serious illness. They're also asking people to do the basics here. Stay home if you're sick, and of course, wash your hands frequently.
Emphasis on that. Stay home if you're sick.
Absolutely.
It is okay. Morgan, thank you so much. And we are updating you on the extraordinary developments overnight. The nighttime military strike on Venezuela and the capture of President Nicolas Maduro, who's now being brought to the U.S. to face narco-terrorism conspiracy charges. ABC's Aaron Katersky is here with the latest on the operation in Venezuela's capital. It was not only President Maduro who was captured, also his wife, who we're learning will also be indicted, Aaron.
That's what the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, says, Janae, that Maduro and now his wife are facing charges here in the United States related to narco-terrorism. Maduro was initially indicted on narco-terrorism conspiracy 6 years ago under the first Trump administration. At the time, prosecutors said the scope and magnitude of the drug trafficking alleged was made possible only because Maduro and others corrupted the institutions of Venezuela and provided political and military protection for the rampant narco-terrorism crimes described in the charges. That was a 28-page indictment. There may yet be additional charges that are unsealed. We're told from multiple sources now that Maduro is eventually going to be flown here to New York to face prosecution in Manhattan federal court. Not exactly sure when we might see him initially in court, but it could be within the coming days.
Yeah, just extraordinary. And special forces involved as well in the capture of Maduro and his wife. We'll be tracking all of that. Aaron, thank you. And we know President Trump weighing in on the operation on his Truth Social platform. Let's get more from ABC's senior White House correspondent, Selena Wang, who is traveling with the president near Mar-a-Lago. Selena, good morning.
And Whit, good morning to you. This was a stunning announcement from President Trump. He's been escalating his threats against Nicolas Maduro for months now, but the size and scale of this operation was not expected. And to your point, the president making the announcement himself on social media that the U.S. has captured Maduro and his wife and that they've been flown out of the country. We're also learning from a source this morning that Trump had actually given the green light to capture Maduro several days ago, but that it was delayed because of those ISIS strike targets in Nigeria. Now, in a brief interview with the New York Times this morning, the president is also praising this operation, saying, quote, a lot of good planning and a lot of great troops and great people. It was a brilliant operation, actually. Now, all of this comes after months of escalating U.S. pressure on Venezuela. The U.S. has amassed the largest military presence in the Caribbean in decades, including deploying the world's largest aircraft carrier. Trump has also, for weeks now, been threatening land strikes inside Venezuela. Trump telling me just last month that those strikes are coming very soon, saying they know every house, every route, and where the drugs are manufactured. But Gio, still huge questions about where everything goes from here. The president will be holding a press conference here in Florida at Mar-a-Lago at 11 a.m. You can expect more details to be shared then.
And we were seeing those live images there from the streets of Venezuela. Selena Wang, thank you so much. And members of Congress are watching the developments very closely from D.C. ABC's Jay O'Brien is on Capitol Hill getting their reaction. Jay, good morning.
Yeah, Gio, good morning. We've heard from several Republicans who have been briefed now by top administration officials. And what they describe, according to what Secretary Marco Rubio has told several of them, is that this was an operation where U.S. military personnel went into Venezuela, arrested Nicolas Maduro and his wife, and took them back here to the U.S. to face prosecution. And what Rubio described to these members of Congress is that those airstrikes, some of those you're seeing on your screen, were to protect the U.S. personnel who were going in to conduct this operation to capture Maduro and his wife. And Rubio telling those members of Congress that he doesn't anticipate additional military action in Venezuela at this current point. Now, we don't know what Democrats have been briefed here, but we have just gotten a statement from Jim Himes, who's the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. I'll read it to you a little bit. He says, quote, Maduro is an illegitimate ruler, but I have seen no evidence that his presidency poses a threat that would justify military action without congressional authorization. He goes on to say he hasn't heard a strategy from the administration to prevent Venezuela from sinking into chaos here. And he points out something that we've heard from several Democrats this morning, which is that in a briefing before the holidays for all members of the House and Senate, it was the impression from Democrats in that briefing of top administration officials, Secretary Rubio was there, as well as Secretary Hegseth, that the administration was not pursuing regime change in Venezuela, guys.
Jay O'Brien, our thanks to you as that response here at home is still coming in this morning. Meanwhile, there is swift reaction from the international community. So let's turn to ABC's Tom Soufi-Burridge for that part of the story. Good morning again to you, Tom.
Good morning, Janae. Yeah, a mixed reaction coming in. The Brazilian President Lula calling the U.S. actions a, quote, flagrant violation of international law and saying it sets an extremely dangerous precedent. Colombia's President Gustavo Petro saying Caracas is, quote, under attack. And other Latin American nations such as Mexico, Cuba and Uruguay also condemning U.S. military action. But the opposite reaction from Argentina's right-wing President Javier Milei, who celebrated the news, writing, long live freedom, and Chile's new president-elect has previously called for Maduro's removal. The European Union's foreign policy chief, who speaks for many traditional U.S. allies on the continent where I am, striking a cautious tone, saying the EU is closely monitoring the situation and repeating the EU's position that Maduro lacks legitimacy and calling for a, quote, peaceful transition of power in Caracas. So lots of reaction coming in. We should get more reaction from the US's more traditional allies like France and the UK here in Europe in the coming hours. Guys.
Yeah, that reaction just beginning. Tom Soufi-Burridge for us. We appreciate it. And a reminder, you can catch all the breaking news on ABC News Live.
That's right. We'll be live all morning long there covering the president's speech, of course, at 11 a.m. Eastern. Thanks for starting your Saturday with us.
We'll see you right back here tomorrow morning.